I think we'll kind of finish the conversation off here with talking about decumulation tax strategies, and really what I'm focusing on is I call it the tax bracket game. As it pertains to distributions and Roth conversions, and what I mean by tax bracket game is you're managing your distributions and your income to kind of stay below a certain tax bracket. And then not push yourself into that next tax bracket. Now, what I'll lead off with before I turn it over to you, Andy, is that I think it's important with this conversation to understand average tax rate versus marginal tax rate, and that just because you get pushed over a threshold, it might nominally impact your average tax rate as opposed to your marginal tax rate. Just your thoughts
Right.
on that.
Yeah, I'll step back and say it's distribution planning and the tax considerations around it. You have to figure out and prioritize what you're solving for.
Hmm.
So, and oftentimes there's competing goals, and you have to just kind of pick which one you want to lean more into. So, example, I work with folks where they have sizable amount of money in pre-tax accounts like 401ks and IRAs, just from their whole life of, put money in on this pre-tax tax deferred basis. So they built up a few $1,000,000 of money in this bucket, if you will, this taxability bucket. And they retire at 61, 62. So they're not yet 65, can't start Medicare and need health insurance. So, oftentimes you just do the COBRA, you extend your employer coverage, but that typically only lasts 18 months. So you still may have a gap between when COBRA ends and Medicare starts. So most likely scenario for folks is to go on the Affordable Care Act, which the benefit of that, it is commercial insurance from commercial insurers, but because it's this Affordable Care Act, there's certain requirements and provisions wrapped around it, and there are subsidies you can get that help reduce the amount of monthly premium you have to pay. These subsidies are based on your income. And if you can keep your income low enough, as shown on your tax return, you can get potentially really sizable subsidies. So here's the conflict. For example, client has $3 million in a pre-tax IRA. They're going to have to pay tax on at some point. So ideally, you should get ahead of that now while federal tax rates are, historically generationally low. You're not yet on Social Security, so you don't have that income going yet. So you have a lot of room to pull money out of this IRA and pay tax at relatively low rates. But you also want to keep your reported income low to try to maximize the tax credits you can get on this Affordable Care Act insurance. So, for example, I have a couple in California who, between the spouses, they're getting roughly $2,000 a month of credits of subsidy on their health insurance premiums through the Affordable Care Act, because we're keeping their income, I forget what the number is, between $100,000 and $150,000. Mm-hmm. And so part of it's like, we got this big IRA we got to start trimming down and getting ahead of to pay tax on now. But if we do that, it's going to raise your income and squeeze out some or all of these rather large subsidies we're getting on ACA insurance. So in this case, we decided collectively, bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It's hard to give up roughly $2,000 a month of present day tax credits. So we're going to lean towards keeping income low, maximize these ACA credits while we can. And then eventually when client's 65 and on Medicare, then start working on trimming down, consciously getting ahead of the IRA taxes. So figure out what you're solving for, what's your priority. Once you do that, yes, you have to have a good understanding of the tax brackets and the other forms of taxes that can come into play, like that net investment income tax I mentioned before, and figure out what you're trying to do. So maybe you want to fill up a tax bracket, 22, 24%. You want to fill it up by, you're going to have dividends and interest maybe, and maybe you're going to have a pension or something. And you want to give yourself more income to like get money out of your pre-tax world, pay tax now instead of pay tax later. So you do Roth conversions, let's say, and you want to solve for how much conversion should I do? Well, this is where you back into, okay, maybe I want to convert just enough to get myself to the top of the 24% tax bracket. To your point, if you do go over, you're in the 32% bracket, which is a big jump, but it's just every incremental dollar over the 24% bracket that's taxed at 32. All the dollars up to that were still taxed at the lower rates. So point is, try to avoid higher tax brackets if you can. But if you do find yourself going in them for whatever reason, maybe you underestimated interest for the year, who knows? Not the end of the world, right? Pay the tax, move on. It doesn't mess with the taxes you paid on all the other money. It's just that incremental money that's at the higher rate.
Yeah, I love that. Identifying what am I solving for, I think is that's the big takeaway from this conversation. I think that applies to retirement planning, tax planning, is like what is the goal I'm trying to accomplish? And then you can kind of work backwards from there to figure out how to do it.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting your financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration.